Good evening, everyone. Let me just do share here. Hi, everybody. Hey, can everybody see everybody and hear everybody? And one of these.
Yes.
I'm not sure how these things line up on the screen. I always feel like it's kind of a Brady Bunch thing here, but
Yes.
I want to thank everybody for joining us. I'll just do a brief intro here and then welcome the folks from the Norden application. Thank you very much for your time to come and present to us. So we are the East Norwalk Neighborhood Association. We basically represent the area that we call the 06855 residential area, from the I-95 to the north all the way down to Long Island Sound, to the east out to the Westport line, and to the west out to the Norwalk River. With us tonight are several of our board members. Not everyone could make it. But we have Roberta D. Bisegli.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Marianne Johansson.
Hello.
Jan Broom. Megan McNeil.
Hello.
And I think that's it of us. My name is Diane Cece. And so what we wanted to do is, after the presentation that you folks had with the preliminary review at the Zoning Commission in Norwalk, we took the materials that you provided to the Zoning Commission and shared it amongst the board members, just so that we can get kind of a lay of the land what the special permit application may be. So we've reviewed a little of it. But we see now in the PowerPoint you're presenting tonight, you really started to delve into some of the questions that we had, and there's a lot more information. So we were eager to get through that. And we're hopeful to be able to get through it relatively quickly. We don't want to skimp on anything that you're interested in talking to us about, but we did want to leave a fair amount of time for questions and answers. And if it's okay with your team, very often after these things end, and we have a regular board meeting after this, by the way, and even during the week, we'll probably come up with some other questions or comments or suggestions that we may want to go back, and then we can just do all of that via email if that works through the attorneys.
I think that's fine.
Does that sound reasonable? Okay.
Yeah, I think that works.
All right. So Megan McNeil, one of our board members, is actually the co-host. She's in the driver's seat, and is able to, I believe you wanted to make one or two of your folks presenters, and if you want to introduce everyone on the team that's here, that would be great.
Sure, that would be great. Thank you so much, Diane. My name is Carolyn Cavolo. I'm an attorney with Shipman & Goodwin, LLP. And can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Sorry, it's always different depending on whose Zoom account it is. Thank you for having us, especially on such short notice. I know August can be tough, so we're really happy to get this in. Again, my name is Carolyn Cavolo, and we have really pretty much the whole development and design team here tonight, which I'm very pleased about. From the development and ownership side, we have Craig Benneroff and Mitch Benneroff of Benneroff Properties. We have Adam Altman from Caber Group. And then on our design side, we've got Eric Lindquist, a professional engineer from Tig & Bond. We have Grant Wright, our project architect from Kenneth Borison Architects. We have Craig Yanis, our traffic engineer with Tig & Bond. So what I would like to do tonight is not take too much time, but I think sort of systematically just go through sort of everyone's points and give a brief explanation of the slides that we've provided to you. You'll note most of this material, not that you've had the time to pore over the application, but most of this material was in the initial submission. Some of because you specifically asked about the tenant uses and the traffic, some of that information is additional and we've been in the process of developing it in order to answer questions from city staff, and then also from the questions that you generated just from our initial presentation last week. Again, it's sort of in the works, but we're some of this is new, and some of it, in particular the traffic, it's additional information to answer questions. So sorry, go ahead.
I think it would be helpful too then if it's additional information, that's great, and we'll be able to discern that. I know you'll point it out. But if there's something that's actually different that has changed from
Nope.
what you presented to zoning, okay.
Right. No, nothing has changed. It's just been a little bit additional information.
Gotcha.
And everything that you're seeing tonight either was already in the initial submission or will be part of our supplemental materials that we put in, hopefully for the September meeting or whenever we go in for a more fulsome preliminary review.
Great.
So it won't be the only time that you're seeing it, but it's sort of a work in progress. So I'll just start I know many of you saw the presentation last week, but just so it's top of mind. Actually, Megan, if I could share my screen, let's see, I think. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
So, let's see. All right. So we'll start here. So this is the same overview sort of aerial that we showed at the zoning meeting. Norden Place KB LLC, which is the Benioff and Caber Groups, is currently under contract to purchase a portion of 10 Norden Place A. And it's the easterly portion of the building that has the little 10 over it here. This property, the entirety of the building has been, it has been diminishing in how many tenants have been there. So it has been largely vacant for a long time. So I know that everyone is particularly interested in the new proposed redevelopment. The proposed redevelopment of the actual property involves fairly minimal changes to the building, as you'll see when we go through the elevations. And the site, you'll note, has the natural and existing buffers of I-95 to the north and the Metro North train tracks to the south. As you may have heard at the Zoning Commission meeting, this will be a land condominium form of ownership, and the only real significance of that is that we're not subdividing the property. We wouldn't be able to do that. So in order to have two separate ownerships of each portion of the building, we're doing a land condominium. Right now, there's no plan the plan is that the building stays in place and just half of it, the easterly portion, will be part of what's called the East Unit that will be owned by this new entity that has submitted the application. So it would not be subdivided, and the significance of that is that it remains at one zoning parcel with the remainder of the property. That's more of a zoning issue. The application for special permit was filed on June 30th, 2020, and it is for warehouse and wholesale distribution use. The property is located in the restricted industrial zone. Actually, a small portion of the westerly side of the property is located in research and development, but where we are working is in the restricted industrial zone. If we look here, you can see you can see the dividing line and basically how the building will be divided by the unit boundary. The easterly portion is what would be the subject of this special permit application. The permitted uses on this site include manufacturing, processing or assembly of goods, research and development facilities, public utility or storage facilities, and up to 60% of gross floor area available for office use, including colleges and universities, not to exceed 80,000 square feet. Specially permitted uses on site. That's what we're going for here is a special permit. Warehouse and wholesale distribution facilities, which is what our application is for. Oil or petroleum storage facilities, helicopter landing sites as an accessory use, commercial recreation establishments, and processing, assembly, preparation of passenger motor vehicles, indoor and outdoor storage of passenger motor vehicles, and indoor storage of ancillary automotive parts and equipment. I just want to point out there also was a minor activity Conservation Commission permit application that was submitted, and we already received approval on that. but what we're still working on is the special permit application. As you'll hear tonight from our panel, we're proposing a less intense use than what is otherwise permitted on site, both from an employee perspective and from a traffic perspective. So to start the rest of our presentation, I would like to ask Craig Benneroff and Mitch Benneroff to discuss the proposed uses and more information on the tenant use.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Craig Benneroff. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for inviting us to your meeting. You know, I'm here representing Benneroff Properties and Caber Group, which is the partnership that will be buying the property. Benneroff Properties is a family real estate business of which I'm the third generation. My father, Mitch, who's also on the call. Together, we operate a portfolio of very similar type properties, light industrial in Westchester and Connecticut. Caber Group was also our partner on multiple deals together. They're similar on a slightly larger scale and based in New Jersey. So, just, you know, Carolyn asked me to talk through about, you know, what the tenant uses will be like here. So I want to first start to say that we don't know exactly who the tenants will be because, you know, we are doing some work here and we'll be leasing it. So, you know, the tenants are yet to come, but we do know what the tenants will be like. And that really gets to the core of the permit that we're asking for, this warehouse and wholesale distribution. I think the key word there is wholesale distribution. So I think in context, it's to be thought of as like B2B or business to business rather than B2C or business to consumer. So that, you know, the products stored in this warehouse will be more delivered to businesses and stores rather than to individuals. And a good way, you know, a good way to describe what this like is really just to kind of talk about the spaces. So our half is 300,000 feet, give or take, and we're talking about dividing it into two or three spots. So basically 60 to 100,000 foot boxes. So that we're talking about big boxes and generally low employees. You know, an economic analysis, I think it's around 100 employees for the whole thing. So, you know, that, and also just to contrast what we mean by the B2B in terms of a warehouse and the distribution of the trucks, again, going to businesses and stores rather than like a FedEx or a UPS, which would be going to people, consumers, B2C. So that's a use we're not entertaining. To give some examples of what these tenants are like, and again, we have some of these in our portfolio, similar size, similar use. So a company called Bunzel, similar, 100,000 feet. They distribute paper goods like paper plates and cups and napkins to restaurants and businesses. Another one, Gray Bar Electric, big 100,000 feet, full of electrical supplies, like for electrical contractors, big reels of wire, like big stuff. And another example is a company called like Fulfillment Works. You might hear a lot about e-commerce and fulfillment. This is a company where, you know, products come into their space and they sort of assemble, you know, kind of pick and pack or assemble them into another box. And then those boxes then go to UPS or FedEx to delivery to people. So that's kind of called e-commerce fulfillment. So those are the types of tenants. Like I said, in comparison, you know, Norden Place, you know, there were thousands of employees that used to be in this building. So that, you know, and again, Eric and Craig from Ty and Bond will get into the traffic studies, but like Carolyn said, this is a use, a lighter use than the other potential uses there. And that's most of what I have to say.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Craig. And two, we will have opportunity to discuss and have questions later, but just to get into the next set of questions, we'll have some of the engineering and site change information, and that will be Eric Lindquist from Taiga Bond. We'll go through that with us. He's one of our project engineers. Eric?
Hi, sure, thanks. Good evening. My name is Eric Lindquist. I'm a professional engineer licensed in the state of Connecticut, have about 20 plus years of experience, and I work at Time Bond. But so basically, if you saw the meeting last week, you got a good understanding of largely what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to go over the site changes primarily, and then kind of get into a couple of the other items related to parking and loading for the trucks. So basically, the main issue, there are two major areas where we're doing improvements, and I use the word major kind of, neither one is very major, but they're the more significant parts of the application. The first is out by the roadway, where we're consolidating two of these southerly entrances. As you recall, there is a northerly entrance, which is used for both the office building and the primary entrance for Avalon. And on the south side, there is a secondary entrance to the property, as well as a third entrance, which is used by the Connecticut DOT for a laydown area that they've been using for the past several years doing work in the area. So what we have proposed is to clean up the entrance and make an improvement along Norden Place by consolidating those two driveways into one, which allows us to, number one, reduce the number of curb cuts on Norden Place, as well as to provide a streamlined approach into the site for trucks to make it easier for them to come in without doing all sorts of hairpin turns and things like that. So that'll help us out tremendously in terms of truck access, as well as cleaning up the frontage along Norden Place. The second primary change is on the north side of the building, which is where the new loading docks will be located. That'll be very internal. That'll be facing I-95, and the trucks will come in through the site, through the new entrance, all along the southern portion of the site, turn up along the eastern face of the building, and go into the loading area, which is on the north face of the building. We are proposing some minor edits to that easterly parking lot to allow for the trucks to get through there. It was a fairly narrow corridor, so we've widened it up and made some improvements to the islands. But that's really the main part of the change over there. Parking, as you can see, will be primarily on the eastern side of the building. We'll be reusing the parking lot over there. There's a series of islands and things that are segregating the parking. No real significant changes to that. Operationally speaking, there were some comments from the city related to pollution mitigation in terms of sound pollution from HVACs, generators, and things of that nature. There are no mechanical improvements as part of the project. We're reusing existing facilities on site. So there is an existing generator system to the south of the building, which is, I believe, there for municipal use actually, to help with the grid. But the HVAC units will all stay in place. There's nothing new proposed at this time as part of the building. There's no need at this moment to do anything. So we're going to be maintaining that. So noise levels will be the same as they are right now in relation to those pieces of equipment. Trash and recycling will also be on the southern end of the building where it is now. There's not an expectation that there'll be any more generation than currently out there. Well, I shouldn't say currently, the building's empty, but when there was normal practices on site. The trash area is on the south side of the building. The pickup will be, to be determined, but likely once a week, something along those lines. So it's not going to be a frequent changing of dumpsters and things of that nature. There's also a concern about the potential for truck noises and idling. The idea is that there's going to be no truck queuing as part of this. Craig will get into the traffic numbers later, but to kind of give a precursor to that, there will be trucks that pull in, and there's no expectation that there'll be any queuing times because the trucks will have access to a loading bay. They'll come in, back in, load, and then when they need to leave, they'll leave. They won't be sitting out there idling waiting for a spot. The truck generation is not significant enough to need additional spaces or queuing areas. So the idling sound of trucks is fairly minimal, if anyone knows trucks. The real noise for trucks is when they accelerate and decelerate, and there won't be any significant noise, additional noise above and beyond from the idling of the trucks in that area. But I can say, basically, in my professional opinion, the plan can be built and operated with no safety concerns, or from my perspective, from drainage and noise and things of that nature, no adverse impacts on the surrounding neighborhoods.
Thanks, Eric. Next, we'll go through the architectural slides, elevations, and plans, and this will be our project architect, Grant Wright.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thanks, Carolyn. These are just some basic, as Craig and Eric had mentioned, we've been working together for quite some time now, trying to develop this and really focus on the civil and site access to the spot. Overall, from a building standpoint, the building is what it is at this point. There aren't many changes other than maybe some of the little outcroppings of the buildings that will end up being removed to allow for the truck access. These are some of the existing photos that you can see here of the upper left-hand photo there is of the northeast dock area. That's currently what's there with Pepperidge Farms, the outcrop there. We'll be adding 8 new loading docks along that elevation. And then in the few pictures in the middle there, you can see the southeast portion of the building. These are all existing. You can see where the stockpile of material is. There are currently existing 5 existing loading docks along the south side, and we'll be adding or looking to add at least 6 more along that facade. The other pictures are kind of the existing untouched area of the courtyards to the west of the property. If you look at the next slide here, these are just some conceptual renderings of the space. So the view above is the northeast loading dock. Eric was mentioning how the access to the site would come into this particular area. For purposes of construction, this is one of the most invasive areas right now. We're cutting, this will be some kind of enclosed loading area for the 8 new loading docks. The lower picture here is the 5 existing and 6 new locations along the southeast facade. The next slide here will show us the main level plan, which the tenant space is still being discussed at this point, but for purposes of our proposal now, we're looking at doing the 2 larger spaces, as Craig had mentioned. This floor is broken up to a 70,000 and approximately 70,000 and 100,000 square foot tenant spaces. The plan itself is, apologies for this, but it's rotated for our architectural plans. So the lower portion is actually the northeast dock. So you can see the lower portion of the 8 docks down below. And then the upper portion is the south. So the upper left-hand corner would be the southeast of the building. And that's the location of the new docks to that in that location. And then you can see the dividing line, which Carolyn had mentioned at the beginning of the portion of the building that's actually being purchased and utilized for this space. But like Eric said, we're looking at reusing existing HVAC, existing generators on site. We're looking into that stuff now, and it's from a construction standpoint, it's a pretty non-invasive project. So
Thank you, Grant.
you're welcome.
Now I'd like to switch over to a discussion of the traffic report, and that will be Craig Yanis, our traffic engineer from Tiger Bond.
Yeah, thanks, Carolyn. Carolyn said, Craig Yanis at Time Bond. I'm a licensed engineer in Connecticut, a professional traffic operations and a roadway safety professional. We were hired to review the potential impact of the proposed development on the local roadway. We performed a comprehensive and industry standard traffic study to assess the conditions following the development, which was part of the application package. That application package was actually sent to the Office of the State Traffic Administration, so the Connecticut DOT level review of the site, as well as the Norwalk Local Traffic Authority, the Norwalk Police Commission, reviewed and agreed with our findings, and we're working with the city staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission, or the Zoning Commission, I'm sorry, to their comments and questions. And as Carolyn said today, we're here to understand your concerns about the project. So moving to the slides, we have the first slide here shows the site, the size, the side of the site, the eastern portion that we're we're looking at and the study area intersections, we have the 2 to the north on Strawberry Hill Avenue, which is Norden Place and Beacon Street. Then we pass the site with the 3 driveways. As Eric mentioned, the 2 to the south will be consolidated into 1 in the future. And then continuing to the south, we have the Triangle Street, Route 136 or Winfield Street section that was also part of our study area. And as Craig Beneroff gave in the introduction, and Carolyn mentioned it too, you know, the trip generation of the proposed warehouse use is less intense for the day and also the peak hours. So if we go to the next slide, you know, we actually analyzed the morning and the weekday morning and the weekday afternoon peak hours, since that's the time when the local roadways and the development traffic for the most part are at their busiest levels, and there's the potential for the site to have traffic capacity impacts. So looking at this table here, this was part of our study. It's been supplemented to include the weekday data. So the submitted traffic study has one row in each section here, but we're adding this as part of our supplemental package. So what it shows is the weekday morning, the weekday afternoon, and the weekday period traffic volumes. And working through the sets of rows, the top 3 rows or the top section is the passenger car trips or the car trips. The middle section is the truck trips. And then the bottom section is the combination of the cars and the trucks. So if you kind of look towards the bottom, you know, we're expecting 65 AM peak hour trips, 67 peak hour trips, and 574 daily trips for the proposed warehouse use, of which there's, you know, 7 to 10 truck trips during the peak hours, and then 200 of the 574 throughout the day are expected to be trucks. So overall, this represents a pretty moderate to low traffic generator when you compare to the previous approved use, which we'll do on the following slide. Go ahead and click on 14 there. So this kind of does the same thing without the breakout of the truck traffic. There's 3 kind of previous approved uses on the site: research and development, manufacturing, and general office. So this presents those weekday morning, weekday afternoon, and weekday daily trips. So if we're looking at the top section, research and development center, you know, 140 to 160 peak-hour trips and 3,700 throughout the day. Manufacturing, a little more during the peaks of around 200 to 220, you know, 1,300 for the day. And then a general office, which would be a pretty intense use during the peak hours for obvious reasons, around 380 trips per hour per peak hour and 3,200 for the day. So you can compare by what we saw on the previous slide, and I'll show you in a second. You know, if we were to occupy the site with the previous approved uses, there'd be quite a bit more traffic generation. So let's go to the next slide. So kind of just switching the axis. So going left to right, you have the use, the AM peak hour, the PM peak hour, and the daily. So this hopefully, once you get to look at it for a second, won't go make you go cross-eyed too much. But the top section is the proposed warehouse use, which is the same numbers I showed you on table 4. And previously approved going down are table 5. So you can kind of look down the columns. So looking at the AM peak, the 65 versus the 205 versus the 383 and 139. And the other thing that adds to this graphic, this table, shows the differentiation between the cars and the trucks for the manufacturing use and the office use. For research and development, the car/truck split data is not available in our data set. So, you know, we put those 2 combined totals on that row. We expect it to be somewhere similar to between the manufacturing and the office. So slightly less truck traffic than the manufacturing, but slightly more than the office. So just looking at trucks alone, during the peak hours, the warehouse is pretty similar to the manufacturing use, probably slightly higher than the office and the research and development. And then obviously, like I mentioned, the total traffic, the daily traffic, as well as the peaks, are significantly less for the warehouse when compared to the other 3 previously approved uses. So if we can go to the next slide. So obviously truck access is a big deal here, and that's why we've kind of broken out the tables to show that truck traffic. And planning for truck trips and the access is a critical part of this project. You know, as we see with this map here, it's a little small, but colors kind of show the story. There's several options for routes, some of which have restrictions over others. So starting with the green route, so going north from the site up Norden to Strawberry Hill Avenue northbound, you can access Route 1. And that allows you to get to the interchange of Route 1 and Route 7 to go any direction on Route 7, either direction on 95. And then you can also use Route 1 traveling to Westport, the Sherwood Island connector, and the direct access to I-95 along US Route 1 in Westport. And so this route keeps the trucks on the major roadways, the minor arterials, which is Strawberry Hill Avenue, the principal arterial, which is US Route 1, as well as the interstates. You know, we can kind of consider this the primary access. There's no geometric or overhead truck height clearance issues that are some of the other ones. So we think that should be the primary access to the site for the trucks. So moving to the secondary option, they could travel along that yellow path shown in the middle. So going north on Norden, making a left turn this time onto Strawberry Hill, and then to Fitch and East Avenue to I-95 interchange 16. So this also doesn't have any overhead clearance issues, but there is a radius. The right turn from Fitch Street onto East Avenue is pretty limited. So it may be hard for some of the larger vehicles to make that turn. So depending on the size of the vehicle, they would have to, you know, assess that route. The stop bar is set back, so it allows the intersection to be a little bit bigger on East Avenue to make that right turn. But some of the larger vehicles will still have a little bit of an issue. Coming in, obviously that radius is not as much of an issue because you're making a left turn into Fitch to Strawberry Hill. So that's definitely a good secondary option, pretty close. It's on the major roads with the exception of Fitch Street, which is a local roadway. But Fitch Street does have a pretty wide radius right turn that was put in for the truck turns at that intersection. And then looking at the third options, really the pink options. So both of these, the east and west, have overhead clearance issues. So the railroad underpasses really restrict the ability of the largest trucks to get into the site. So they're outlined here, but I'm sure everybody's well aware of this in this area. But there's some in East Avenue, there's some in South Norwalk, as well as the one up by 136 by interchange 17. So this would be more used by small box trucks, delivery trucks, and anything that's under the one route to the east. The lowest height clearance is 10'11", and over to the west, the lowest height clearance is 11'2". So most tractor trailer trucks being 12 feet or higher, up to the 13.5-foot maximum, wouldn't be able to take these routes, and they'd have to search the primary routes. So if we want to go to the last slide. So based on our analyses here, it's our professional opinion that the warehouse use is not expected to significantly impact the study area. The site has 2 driveways to spread the trips to and from the site, the southern of which Eric mentioned, will be consolidated into one location, cleaning up the Norden Place roadway with the 2 closely spaced intersections. It'll also be designed to take all the truck traffic from the site. As mentioned, the warehouse use is a relatively low traffic generator at 65 trips in the peak hour. These additional trips will have a minimal operational impact during the peaks. So the signalized interceptions will actually operate at their existing overall level of service, which is level service B or C, all 3 of them. The driveways operate efficiently at level service A and B. And for both of those, all approaches to the intersections, we don't expect queues to increase by more than 1 car, which is about 25 feet. And as I showed with the previous map, truck have access routes to the site from major adjacent roadways that are not through the neighborhoods. With that, I'll turn it back to Carolyn to wrap up our presentation.
Thanks, Craig. So overall, we think this is a beneficial use and a good productive use of a site that's been nearly vacant and unused, certainly for quite a while. It is a less intense use than other permitted uses, and we do not expect an adverse impact from the site use. The actual use on site, and I know that there will be some questions regarding the use of the building and the site plan itself is not changing very much, and we would also be happy to answer any questions that you have on that or on any of our presentation items. We again just appreciate the board's time and making yourselves available. I know you're all volunteers, and this is a real tough time for all of us. There's a lot going on, but we were requested. The city staff did request, and then the chairman of the TZC was happy to hear that we would be meeting with you and making ourselves and our plans available to discuss with you. So with that, I will just ask for any questions that we can answer.
Thanks, Carolyn. I don't know if we want to leave that up just in case we need to go back and reference some of the slides.
Sure.
If it's okay with the board, we had some prepared questions, as you know, which I think some of them got answered, but I think I want to run through some of these just to make sure we have an understanding. Mm-hmm. And having seen more of a robust presentation this evening, Carolyn, I would say we'll likely submit some more comment and questions to you, because there is a concern. And I think just on behalf of the residents in the neighborhood in general, there would be a concern when we look at applications that tend to be presented as not as bad as what it could be when you look at other uses, but we have to evaluate it on its own merits in terms of what it will be. And certainly when you do comparisons to prior uses, I think you folks are aware of how far back that dates in terms of Norden and Northrop Grumman. People have already made reference to the literally thousands of cars coming in and out, but we're talking about the 1980s. So, I hope that you'll keep that in mind. Let me get a few of these in, and then we'll open it up to the board. From a business point of view, and maybe Mr. Beneroff can am I saying your name correctly, I hope?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Our understanding is that you're under contract to purchase the building and to close on it in October. But are we assuming that the purchase is conditional or contingent on the zoning approvals? Or are you the owner regardless of the process you're doing now in the city?
I'll start. I'll give a little bit of an answer on that. We are under contract, and if we do obtain approvals, we will go to closing. So it is, we do have a contingency, and the October timing is not correct. We may not even have gone for our public hearing by then.
Okay, yep, and and that's actually what I was concerned about, and I saw it in other places too, so that time frame would have been concerning. The zoning commission, and even tonight, I know you mentioned land condominium as the ownership, and I think it's a legal term for you. You're segregating A from B as the total property, but are you talking about land condominiums where each of the bays or docks or that space is individually owned and they're taxed parcels within the 300,000 square feet?
No.
The whole building is the condominium, the
correct.
Ownership.
Correct.
Okay.
I'll just show you very briefly just to get an idea. If we go to this site, the easterly portion of the building and the property, not including the data center, just the
Right.
property that is 10A.
Right.
This would be the east unit. And then over here, the portion of the property retained by the seller would be the west unit. You say land condo, all we mean is it's not like a condominiumizing of the building. It's the
Okay.
entirety of the property will be, there will be
Gotcha.
the boundary.
Thank you for that. And then when you talk about the less intense warehouse versus the being the, I think you call it the middleman of the life cycle there. We have equated that to, instead of being a whole lot of smaller trucks, it's fewer trucks but bigger. And our zoning commissioner, he used a term, I really missed it, but I think he called it WD-50, and I think it was in relationship to size of the trucks that you would anticipate from the typical client. So are we talking about fewer trucks, but mostly they're tractor trailers?
I would have either Craig Benneroff or Craig Yanis answer that. I'm not sure which of you guys want to jump in and discuss that.
I'll defer to Craig. Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of the size, I mean, WB50 is actually an old standard. So it's actually WB62s or WB67s would be the traditional tractor trailer size, and that's the length from the bumper to the bumper. And normally the trailers are about 53 feet in the largest option. In terms of the types of trucks, our data obviously aggregates all types of sites, all types of warehouse uses into one number. So the truck trips are anything from a small box truck size up into that large semi-tractor trailer combination. In terms of the operations, I'd have to defer to Craig Benneroff on what he expects to see with the tenants that he may be talking to.
And I think the answer is a mix of trucks. You know, I think, you know, generally, I think it's just a mix. You know, I think, but you're right in saying that a UPX or a FedEx is a bunch of lots of little vans, and we're not envisioning that type of scenario. This is more tractor trailers coming and going.
I do think, this is Mitch Benneroff speaking, I do think that typically the number of tractor trailers for the type of tenants that we're trying to attract are somewhat less, and it's more likely that what I refer to as a 26-foot rack job or straight job is going to be the, you know, sort of the truck of choice of the tenants for delivering their products to their customers. And that's just a guess. We don't really know what kind of tenant response we're going to get, but our experience says that that's the case.
With the access, if you could clarify the number of loading docks or bays, I'm not sure if that's the same terminology. The zoning commission, you referenced 8, 6, and 5, so 19. And then I think I was actually on your site, Mr. Benneroff. I'm still going to say your name wrong. I'm so sorry. Say it again for me.
That's fine. Benneroff is right.
Benneroff, okay. On your website, I think I saw something that indicated 24 bays. Is there, is 19 the right number of bays in total with the retrofit?
I think we have, so, you know, Grant had mentioned the outcrops. I think if you look at the picture Carolyn's showing right now on the lower level, the lower level truck court, you see there's like 2 tractor trailers and then a box truck, and then there's like a outcrop of the building.
Right.
So we are entertaining a plan where that outcrop could be removed, which would allow for additional docks. We haven't had that fully vetted yet, but that's an option.
But
So
right
those numbers
now,
are not in the application that's in the special permit now with zoning? Okay.
correct, no, right? The application as it is 19.
Yeah, my website might be wrong. I might have just
Okay.
put more because we have a theoretical potential for more.
Okay, I got it.
We're
I want to bring up a concern. I know the other board members will too. So we'll just kind of jump to the chase. We want to be respectful of your time. And we want to make sure that we hit the points that we know are relevant to us and would be controversial in the neighborhood. If you're looking at the access points that Craig just showed us, and you're talking about trucks that are really any bigger than a box truck, you're talking about maneuverability issues that really could gridlock the community. If you're coming off of exit 16 from the south and you want to take a right to go to Fitch Street because you don't have the passage yet under East Avenue or Strawberry Hill Avenue, making that turn there with a tractor trailer would be nearly impossible without the traffic at the already queued at the light being impacted. And then it queues at another light that's right there as you turn the corner at Rite Aid. You have the same situation when you're coming from the northbound, heading south on exit 16 to try to maneuver to take a left. You're cutting into the traffic that's queuing, waiting to go on the highway. I hope you're not suggesting that you'll have truck traffic that goes through the neighborhood up on Beacon Street, or coming through the neighborhoods that way. I also want to suggest to you, when you're looking at Strawberry Hill as minor arterial, you guys are probably already aware, but there's 3 schools on that road, an elementary, a middle, and a high school that are all on Strawberry Hill. And I think the zoning commission would take that into account in terms of the traffic. And then you already know the difficulties in terms of access in or out of 136 going in and out of Westport. So if we can just leave that as a serious concern, or you can address that if you'd like.
We take it as a concern and a comment, and thank you for that. And if Craig, Yanis, if you have any comment on that, please let me know. If not, we can take it as a concern.
Yep, and if you want to address it in detail later as we continue to communicate, which I hope we do, we're okay with that as well. Part of the concern is often the traffic studies in here get done here like other places, and they don't go out into the broader community. There's not enough of the peripheral impact. And so when I read the initial traffic study, and Carolyn, I hope you got a kick out of my assuming the no significant impact, because
we did.
Because yeah, we live with that daily. But I didn't really see where you had taken into account coming through East Avenue off of I-95. And so while we recognize you have multiple routes, that would be a serious concern for us given the other developments that are going on and the planned developments. OSTA, the state agency, when they do your review, are supposed to take those things into account, through a number of years through their projections. And I hope, I certainly hope that they would do that. And then we have, some typical quality of life issues with the, trucks be parking there overnight. If they arrive in the middle of the night, do they park there? If there is queuing just to wait in line because not everybody has an appointment. I understand you said that's not likely to happen. And of course, we have a concern for the abutting neighbors at Avalon and in the nearby area. Everyone's subjected to what we call the beep, beep, beep phenomenon, with trucks having to back up into bays. And that could be extraordinarily discomforting. And we are the ones actually asked about HVAC and generators and things like that, because a lot of times people just don't realize what a quality of life impact those things have, especially if you think generators get tested in the middle of the night or on a Sunday afternoon.
Can I interrupt on the traffic part of it on the truck part of it while we are still there? I mean, the Office of the State Traffic Administration did review our application and they approved our trip generation numbers, including all the truck traffic. So we're actually just waiting on the city approval in order to move forward with that. So they're essentially ready to give us our approval as long as the city agrees and wants the development. And the other part about the truck routes and the access point, I do want to make it clear that the site isn't generating larger trucks than are on the roadway today.
Right.
The roadway does carry truck traffic. Right. So it's not like they're larger or bigger, any different. And these routes were reviewed in order to see if they can make the turns, notwithstanding of cars within the intersection, just like anywhere else. They have to wait until there's a clear section of the intersection in order to get in. So
right, yeah,
understood. We do feel like certain ones are better than others.
Yeah, I think it's the quantity and the the number of hours of subjected to that. What are the hours, by the way? Is this a 24/7 operation, which I don't think is, I don't think I saw that anywhere in the plan.
I can try to answer that. The truth is, it's unpredictable. and will be based on the kind of tenants that we attract. And to make a projection or a prediction on what that would be, I think is misleading. And it would be pure conjecture. Hitting it as a 24-hour operation, but that's, doesn't account for what the market might provide us with.
Understood. Okay, Megan, can we open it up to the board members who have their hands raised or that I'm seeing here in chat? I think Sarah Hunter had questions, and we can go around the board quick.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Thanks. This is Sarah, and I know I don't have a picture up there. So actually just speaking to that point about the quantity of trips and trucks, there was a slide that said site generated traffic, AM peak hours. It has cars, and then it says 7 trucks, and PM peak hours, 10 trucks. It looked a little different. It had but regardless, maybe this has the same thing. It was, no, it looked more, it had at the top of it manufacturing and office space. But regardless, to the point of, I see 7 and 10 over there as well. So maybe that's it. So if you have, if your prediction or allowance or whatever term you want to say is that you would have AM 7 truck trips and PM 10 truck trips, it seems as if there's an extreme amount of loading docks compared to 17 visits a day. So I think that, that's sort of 1 loading dock per truck. So there must be something I'm misunderstanding here with that 7 and 10 as to why there would be, I can't remember if it was 16 loading docks, but it was a lot. So could you help explain that, please?
Yeah. So,
I think,
so basically,
is it per hour? Okay.
yeah. So there's 3 different numbers shown on. There's 3 different numbers shown on this table in front of you. So it's the weekday morning peak hour. So within 1 hour, essentially 4 trucks are entering, 3 trucks are exiting, for a total of 7. So that's really only like, if you think about it, a truck enters, it delivers its goods, it leaves. Maybe it doesn't happen in a peak hour, but that's 1 hour. And then the weekday afternoon, 5 coming in, 5 going out.
Okay, so if I were to say it a different way to make sure I've got that right, if I'm sitting in my house and I'm going to see 7 trucks going past my house per hour in the morning, and I'm going to see 10 trucks going past my house per hour in the afternoon. Per
the peak hour, and then that's
right.
For 17 of the trips, which we have a daily number there as well of 198. So that's essentially 100 trucks coming in, 100 trucks going out in 1 day.
So they're all going to be just
over
past
hours,
my house back
obviously.
and forth all day. Okay, I'm glad I understand it. I'm gonna go back on mute. Thank you.
Mary Ann, I think.
I actually was going to ask the same question that Sarah, because I just thought also the numbers are, I guess, on an average, because since you don't know what businesses are going to be going in there, they could be potentially higher or lower. Is that correct?
That is correct. This is a data set that aggregates many sites. So it kind of produces an average of what we could expect.
Okay, so if it's in theory like a gray bar, electrical wholesaler type of business, there could be potentially even more than 198 per day.
I would say that on average, if you have a few tenants, that you'd get closer to the average, but I can't guarantee it one way or another.
Okay, thank you. Actually, I do have one other question. The East Norwalk area has been pursuing to try and make more bike lanes available, and I do a lot of biking on the weekends. And if we're going to have a lot more trucks on 136, East Avenue, Strawberry Hill, all of these roads, is that going to be more difficult with biking? Because now we're adding, 200-ish additional trucks back and forth on these roads?
So for Strawberry Hill, for example, does have bike lanes the whole way, so they have their own dedicated space.
Yeah.
So there's no issue there.
Yeah.
Route 136, if it's a smaller truck, obviously that's what we are saying it's going to be because of the height restrictions.
Mhm.
You know, there should be sufficient space in the shoulder if there is a shoulder. If there isn't, you know, hopefully the town, the city, and the state, as a state route, can find an option for bicycle traffic along those routes. Why
Mhm.
we do the differentiation between the local roadways, the minor arterials, the principal arterials. The higher class you get, or it's tailored towards larger vehicles or higher traffic. So generally, in a lot of these cases, we want to keep those larger trucks on the larger routes so that there is room on the other routes for the pedestrians and the bicyclists. You know, obviously realizing that some of, you know, like the schools, for example, are located on a minor arterial, but that's just unavoidable in some cases. So there are bike and ped facilities in this area. Also, Norden Place is very wide, the site. So there is definitely room for bicyclists on the roadway. So I think that the bicyclists and pedestrians are served fairly well in this area compared to some others that could be more congested.
Okay, thank you.
We have Jan.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, a little bit louder, Jan.
Let me get this. Is that better? Is that better?
Yep, yep.
Yep, okay. I have questions. It's similar. It goes back to the truck traffic just because I know your primary route that you expressed was going to go down the post road and come up Strawberry Hill. And I don't know too many truckers that would want to deal with Strawberry Hill because of the early morning school and the afternoon time schools letting in and out. That is really going to slow down their delivery times. So I don't know that the preferred access is going to be the best route in terms, just thinking in terms of a truck driver. So I think that more of them are going to have to navigate down East Avenue and cut over that way. So that's something to consider. Another thing, was there some sort of way to route trucks off of exit 17 and come down 136? I know if they are using Waze or some sort of a map access, it will probably direct them off of exit 16 instead of exit 17. So that's another thing to consider for the residents of East Norwalk. And then another question I had, a lot of times if a truck driver misses because of traffic or whatever, if he's driving from Ohio and he's got to get to this distribution center and he gets caught in traffic and so he doesn't get here until 7 or 8 o'clock at night, then he's got to go through East Norwalk and he's got to park somewhere and wait until that first delivery opening at 7 o'clock in the morning or whatever time it is. Or sometimes trucks will, in order to get that first delivery slot at 7 or 7:30 in the morning, even though they've made a delivery appointment, which is often how the receiving places will work, they will get there at 5 o'clock in the morning to make sure they get that early slot. So residents of East Norwalk logistically will probably be impacted by this more truck traffic than we realize. And so that's something that really needs to be factored into all of this, because it may impact our residential property values. If we go to sell our homes or try to rent our properties, it's going to impact that. And so that's something to consider. And I would encourage you to drive down Strawberry Hill because I rarely see a truck going down Strawberry Hill. I usually see them going down East Avenue and trying to navigate somewhere that way or going down, 136. So that's the main thing that I would consider in this, just for the close residents. And I don't know if you have a staging area that you've considered if trucks get here during the night, so that they don't have to drive through East Norwalk. They could park somewhere else. You
On
know,
highway.
if that's something that's being considered. You know, it's not like they're going to get off at exit 16 and go up East Avenue and then take a right and park on the Post Road, or they're going to get off at exit 14 and go to Connecticut Avenue and stop at ShopRite or Stop and Shop. So they're not even impacting the residents. They're going to be coming through East Norwalk and through residential areas in order to get to this Norden Place distribution center. So that needs to be factored in some kind of way, because we're going to be impacted, you know, by that. So thank you.
I mean, in terms of the routing, I mean, at the site doesn't have a very big usage right now, so you may see less truck traffic in the area because of that. In terms of 136, there is an overpass, you know, of the railroad that limits trucks to 10 feet 11 inches. So if trucks are below that, they can go that way. If they can't, they got to find the right option. You know, as much as we want to say ways and other things, truckers have to know where they can and can't go. They obviously don't want to get stuck. Occasionally they do get stuck. You know, that's kind of an unavoidable truth. But I think the options we're presenting them here, if they do come down East Avenue coming in, there's no issue geometrically to get in. If they're going out, they may just have a little bit of difficulty at Fitch and East Avenue to get out. And that's kind of the most direct route to Interstate 95. In terms of the daily traffic and the truck, you know, the traffic along the schools with Strawberry Hill Avenue, you know, either they'll have to sit through it or they'll have to plan their trips accordingly. I mean, you know, when it comes to shipping, minutes are important, and they, regardless of what's going on the local roadway network, 95 is the big bear in the room, and that has a lot of congestion. So you need to plan around that, and generally it's, you know, either earlier in the morning or later in the day that they want to make trips through Connecticut, and so they're gonna make their trips work. They're certainly not going to be circulating the area to find a spot. I think Eric may be able to shine some light on where trucks can sit within the site and not anywhere else.
Diane?
Well, I think you know, the concern with that, and we just had our board member, Mark Albertson, join us as well. So I'll step out for a second. We're just going to go for another couple minutes for folks. Mark, did you have any questions related to what you saw here? Or?
Yeah, my question is, what size trucks are we talking? Straight jobs, tractor trailers? What are we talking? Or or a whole gamut? What are you talking?
A mix.
A mix.
Well, yeah.
Okay, so if you're gonna have this once the kids go back to school, you know, I used to be a traffic manager for 10 years. And so you're probably going to have to plan around for some of these companies are going to plan around not interfering with school. That means these guys are going to have to, some of them are going to have to arrive before school, which means with that huge parking lot that Norden's has, do you foresee some of these like road drivers, tractor trailer drivers going into the Norden parking lot and sleeping at night waiting? Because I know where I was, that's what some of the drivers did.
I think you bring up a good point, which is that this property is so big.
Yeah, sure is.
Which is unique in the area. So, you know, part of what we're offering is plenty of parking, and the southern access road inside the northern property, you know, to our unit is huge. So, you know, I think if there was some queuing or building up, this is a unique property to be able to contain that from the neighborhood.
But you know, when you're going down Strawberry Hill and you got a 48-foot tractor trailer, that's a lot of weight on the road itself. I mean, is the bed of the road going to take all this traffic for quite a while? That's another problem. which is why one of the reasons you don't have trucks on the Merritt Parkway, but trucks on I-95, because the bed can take it. You'd wreck the Merritt Parkway if they could go under the bridges. Wouldn't last. But so these are all problems that perhaps need to be factored in here. I mean, my concern is a lot of the traffic, because when they built, I was a kid, I lived on Howard Avenue when they built Norden's. And when it was all said and done, there were 4,000 cars a day in that area of Norwalk. 4,000 a day. And so I don't know how it is when people are, when they get a taste of, I don't know, 50 trucks a day, 100 trucks a day, 200 a day. I don't know how that's going to fly.
Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Carolyn.
No, I was just going to say, I know you need to get to your regular meeting. I just wanted to be able to wrap up if there weren't any other questions.
Yeah. But just, I want to ask one more and then we'll wrap it up. And again, I thank you for the opportunity for us to continue the dialogue via email or maybe have you back. Because it would be unfair to try to, pin down the actual usage without your tenant commitments. We totally understand that. And you have no way to predict the mix even off of the other properties that you currently own and manage. But I think there's a concern that without knowing those, we really don't know the scope of the number of trucks, of the hours of operations, the days. If you're using the traffic engineer, Craig, if you're using standards to ITE, I guess it is, to estimate those versus the actual tenants. We don't know how that relates and then how you adjust for that. So, very often zoning things like this could end up being approved, but with a number of conditions. And I wonder if one of those conditions is the hours of operation, not just the days of the week, but the hours during the day. If that's a significant, if you'd be back to that as a hardship because it limits your marketability to tenants, if they impose that condition on your special permit.
Go ahead, Caroline, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I wasn't sure if that was a question or if it would be a hardship for it to be a condition of hours of operation.
Right, and the reason why I asked Carolyn, and we're kind of upfront people, so I'll just lay it on the line so you can see, how we think about these things. If they impose a condition and you do actually end up, buying the building and you start to do your fit out and you get ready for 2021, but you find that the market is tenants that require hours and days outside of the conditions the zoning commission set, would we expect you then to come back before the commission to ask for an amendment to the conditions based on your ability to rent?
I think any conditions on an approval would be something that would in particular be a real business question. And the answer to that is I would expect there to be, anything that limits the use of the property that you buy would be an issue. And the answer would be it's on a spectrum. It just depends on what the tenant market would be.
Okay, thanks. And the the traffic engineer, I'm sorry, Craig.
Mm-hmm.
Did OSTA consider this a major traffic generator, if that's the right term, in terms of having to do their analysis?
So it is a major traffic generator. The entire site, including Avalon. There's 4 unbuilt homes to the east of Avalon. The data center and the entire building are a major traffic generator. And so what we are applying for here is obviously a change in use from the previous approved uses to the warehouse use. So it's a full application called an administrative decision to revise the major traffic generator certificate for the site.
I understand that. And the other reason I asked is those are public record now on the state of Connecticut site. And
right.
I hadn't seen anything that was listed for a review for this parcel unless it came in under a different address, which I couldn't imagine. But, I do want to have an opportunity to take a look at that and see what the analysis was and to make sure that what you presented to them included the concerns we had on I-95 and Strawberry Hill.
So the application, the OSTA application is part of the the application package.
Okay,
See it there, and we've received comments,
okay,
which are not public record yet until we go through the process of responding to them and doing what
okay.
their approval. But that will
I'll
all
look
be part of
again.
the process.
I hadn't realized that they had approved it pending the local authority. Do you have a date on the traffic authority agenda with the city right now with Mike Yosak?
They've
when
already given us their concurrence. You want the date that was given?
the traffic authority has approved this?
That's correct. They've provided local traffic authority concurrence as part of the OSTA process.
Okay. Carolyn, can you review the next steps for us? At the end of the zoning commission meeting, it was iffy about what the September timeframe was for additional review when you went back to them, and the setting of the public hearing date.
Sure. So I apologize. I don't have the dates up in front of me, but I think the expectation is, and this would be another preliminary review in a meeting, not the public hearing,
Right.
that you'd be welcome to view. The expectation is that would be the second September meeting. Is that the 16th? Or the
That was the 16th.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the expectation, of course, subject to full agendas, and then getting in for public hearing in October. That is the expectation, but nothing has been set. And as you know, they have their 65. They have their number of days. So
Is the October contract date a hard date for if you don't get the zoning approval by a certain date, then there's no deal? Or we recently had that as an application.
There is no October contract date. So,
okay.
Yeah. And so, as I said, our expectation is to get a supplemental package of material in time for the September meeting. That's our goal, just so the preliminary review meeting and presentation can be as thorough as possible. And happy to continue this discussion so we can let the city staff and the commissioners know where we are in answering your questions. Yeah.
Have you met with the abutters at Avalon and on the southern residential streets?
We have not heard from anyone at Avalon. We have heard from one resident in Saugatuck Landing, and I have offered to set up a Zoom with their board or interested parties. I haven't heard back from him. I know he was going to look at the supplemental material that we had
But you did
with the PowerPoint that we had put together last week.
Thanks. But you did reach out to Avalon and the abutting neighbors even ahead of the, I know you don't have to until the hearing, but did you reach out to the abutting neighbors?
We have not reached out other than sending our notice of application.
Is it posted on the property with a placard?
Sorry?
Did they placard the property with a notice of a pending special permit application? Do you know?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, or it's not required. I just wondered if the applicant may have done that on their own. Okay.
No.
Okay, no worries.
Just to
Thank
wrap
you.
up then, just very briefly, because again, we really appreciate your time tonight. We do appreciate the comment earlier, Diane, about how, 1,000 cars 30, 40 years ago doesn't resonate. We're not really hanging our hat on the Northrop Grumman use and as your other board member said, the 4,000 cars that used to be going in and out of there. But we are just making the point that the property is for sale. The property is being redeveloped. And even though it has, the use has been atrophying steadily,
Right.
we're turning a corner on that. So whether it's us or someone else, this use or another use, it's adaptive reuse and research and development and manufacturing, which would be sort of the high tech flex use.
Right.
It's all uses that Norwalk wants. So,
Yeah.
and it's at least 100 jobs just on our site. So that we are balancing all of that. So we're not just trying to wave the past at everyone. It's just, this is going to be sold and used as something. So that's
Yep. So we appreciate that, and we've been, you may not be aware, or you personally may be aware, that we've suffered through erosion of our very limited industrial space now.
Yeah.
And many of us had hoped for higher and best uses that really create a steady and robust job market that brings a better benefit to the community. And at a later date, I think we'd like to talk about the types of jobs that are there and if they're part-time, et cetera, as we consider kind of the pros and cons of this. But thank you for bringing that up. Appreciate it. Okay. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you very much for having us.
Short notice too. I was really amazed that we were actually able to pull this off to get everyone together. Anybody from the board, one last thing before we wrap up and let these guys go and continue on?
No?
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you.